most destructive and intriguing history of the 20th century contains such critical figures and turning points that had those moments and those people lived differently, the world might have been a completely different place. Although the science of history does not permit counterfactuals, some characters and events continue to be debated centuries later. One of these characters, Benito Mussolini, one of the most controversial leaders of World War II, remains a vividly present figure on the dusty pages of history, still one of the most studied figures as the pioneer of fascism. This is because this man fundamentally shaped an entire nation and a political ideology. Let us delve together into how a journalist transformed into a dictator, how he laid the foundations of Italian fascism, how he changed the destiny of Europe, and the tragic end he met. However, before we proceed to the video, the growth of our channel and the production of better content depend on the support of you, our valuable viewers. Please do not forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Benito Amilcare Andrea Mussolini was born on July 29, 1883, in the town of Predappio, Italy. His father, Alessandro Mussolini, was a socialist-minded blacksmith, and his mother, Rosa Maltoni, was a devout teacher. The family's contrasting political and religious views offered the first signs of the young Mussolini's complex personality and ideological journey. Influenced by his father, he took an interest in politics from a young age and became acquainted with Marxist theories. Mussolini exhibited a rebellious and undisciplined character during his childhood and youth. He was frequently involved in fights and expelled from schools. Yet, he was also known to be intelligent, ambitious, and a good orator. After receiving his elementary school teaching diploma in 1901, he focused more on political activities. This period was marked by considerable social and economic turmoil in Italy. Poverty and social inequality created fertile ground for the rise of leftist movements. In this environment, Mussolini traveled to Switzerland and joined socialist movements. Here he organized various strikes, engaged in journalism, and wrote political articles. He began to gain recognition as a talented writer and a fiery speaker. Returning to Italy in 1909, he started working for a newspaper in Trento. Benito quickly became one of the important figures in the Socialist Party and rose to become the chief editor of the party's official newspaper, Avanti, Forward, in 1912. This position provided him with the opportunity to reach a wide audience across the country. However, the outbreak of World War I marked one of the biggest turning points in Mussolini's life. The Socialist Party argued that the war was an imperialist conflict and that Italy should remain neutral. Mussolini, on the other hand, believed that Italy should enter the war, arguing that it would elevate the nation's glory and honor and offer a revolutionary opportunity. This ideological rift led to his expulsion from the party. Mussolini completely broke away from his socialist comrades and began to lay the groundwork for a new ideology that he would call Italian fascism. With the end of World War I, Italy plunged into a deep political, economic, and social crisis. The heavy economic burden of the war, high inflation, unemployment, and mass poverty caused great unrest among the public. Thousands of soldiers returning from the front could not find jobs, and leftist movements and trade unions organized strikes and protests, calling for a communist revolution. In response, industrialists and landowners sought order against the communist threat. It was in this chaotic atmosphere that Mussolini founded a paramilitary organization called the Fasci Italiani di Combattimento, Italian Fighting Squads, on March 23, 1919. This movement brought together war veterans, nationalists, anti-communists, and disillusioned socialists. The movement's symbol, the fasces, was a bundle of rods and an axe representing power and unity in the Roman Empire. The name fascism derived from this symbol. Mussolini's paramilitary forces, known as the Black Shirts, Camicie Nere, violently suppressed communist demonstrations and strikes, rapidly gaining the support of the Italian bourgeoisie and landowners. Violence and intimidation became one of the primary methods adopted by the fascists as a political tool. The Fascist Party's power was further solidified when it won seats in the general elections of 1921. But the true turning point was the March on Rome in 1922. As the Italian government failed to control leftist movements and political instability increased, Mussolini decided to seize all authority. On October 28, 1922, thousands of black shirts under Mussolini's command marched towards Rome. This was essentially an attempted coup, yet Mussolini advanced with the hope that the king would appoint him as prime minister. King Victor Emmanuel III of Italy was forced to accept the rising power of the fascists and prevent a civil war. Although the army could have stopped the march, the king did not order intervention. Instead, he appointed Mussolini as prime minister. While this appointment created the perception that Mussolini came to power through legal means, it was actually a political bluff and coup attempt that ended the democratic system. Mussolini took the position of prime minister on October 31, 1922, and quickly moved to transform Italy into a totalitarian state. One of his first steps was to change the electoral law in his favor. The Acerbo law, passed in 1923, granted 2/3 of the seats in parliament to the party that won the most votes. After the fascists used fraud and intimidation to secure the majority of votes in the 1924 elections, the socialist leader Giacomo Matteotti gave a speech exposing the electoral fraud. Following this speech, Matteotti was kidnapped and assassinated. Although this event triggered a huge wave of reaction against Mussolini, he survived the crisis by becoming even stronger. In a 1925 speech in Parliament, he took full political responsibility and began to take steps that would lead the country to a one-man rule. In 1926, all non-fascist parties were banned, press censorship was increased, and the political police organization, OVRA, was established. Mussolini declared himself Il Duce, the leader, and concentrated all powers in his hands. The entire life of the Italian people was attempted to be aligned with the fascist ideology. Fascist youth organizations were established for young people. Fascist education began in schools, and Mussolini's personality cult was propagated. He also made significant economic changes. In line with the ideal of the Second Roman Empire, he launched a campaign in agriculture called the Battle for Grain. His aim was to make Italy self-sufficient in wheat production. He also initiated major infrastructure projects by building highways, bridges, and public buildings. He reorganized the historic center of Rome and attempted to reclaim agricultural land by draining the Pontine marshes. Mussolini's authoritarianism was supported by conservative circles and business sectors, especially because it brought a period of order and stability to Italy. However, most of these economic successes were achieved through heavy taxes, restriction of workers' rights, and a closed economy policy. One of Mussolini's most significant diplomatic achievements was the Lateran Treaties of 1929, which regulated relations with the Catholic Church. These treaties recognized the Vatican as an independent state and established Catholicism as the state religion. This step earned Mussolini the support of the religious segments of Italy. In foreign policy, he pursued an expansionist path, invading Ethiopia in 1935. Despite the League of Nations condemnation, he did not withdraw from the occupation, and this revealed the weak response of the Western powers, further emboldening Mussolini. In 1936, he supported General Franco's nationalist forces in the Spanish Civil War and became closer to the German leader, Adolf Hitler, during this war. This rapprochement officially turned into an alliance with the Rome-Berlin Axis in 1936 and the Pact of Steel in 1939. Mussolini became Hitler's closest ally, with the dream of establishing the new Roman Empire. When World War II began in 1939, Mussolini's Italy was not ready for war. Severe economic problems and military inadequacies prevented the country from being fully armed. Therefore, Mussolini remained in a non-belligerent position in the first year of the war. However, after Germany's rapid invasion of France in 1940, Mussolini's ambition and opportunism prevailed. On June 10, 1940, when France's defeat was certain, he declared Italy's entry into the war, saying that the participation of an ordinary Italy in the war will make possible the birth of a new Italy. However, despite Mussolini's flamboyant speeches, the Italian army would prove disappointing in the war. Italy's attempt to invade Greece would fail, forcing the Germans to come to the aid of the Italians. Suffering heavy defeats against British and American forces on the North African front, the Italians became a burden on the fronts for the Germans, and the course of the war began to shake Mussolini's authority. By mid-1943, when Allied forces invaded Sicily, the Italian people and some leaders within the Fascist Party were tired of the regime and the war. On July 25, 1943, the Fascist Grand Council passed a no-confidence vote against Mussolini, dismissing him from office. King Victor Emmanuel III supported this decision and had Mussolini arrested. This event marked the end of the 21-year rule of the fascist regime. Italy signed an armistice with the Allies shortly thereafter. However, the story did not end there. On September 12, 1943, German commandos, led by Otto Skorzeny, rescued Mussolini from the Mountain Hotel in Gran Sasso in a daring operation. Hitler placed his old ally at the head of a puppet state called the Italian Social Republic, Salo Republic, in German-occupied northern Italy. This regime was entirely under German control and led to the outbreak of a civil war in Italy. On one side, partisans clashed with the Germans and fascist loyalists on the other. Towards the end of the war, Germany's defeat was certain. On April 25, 1945, as German forces withdrew from Italy, Mussolini and his mistress, Clara Petacci, attempted to flee to Switzerland with a group of fascist leaders. However, they were captured by Italian partisans near Dongo on April 27, and on April 28, 1945, Mussolini and Petacci were executed by firing squad by the partisans. Their bodies were hung upside down in front of a gas station in Piazzale Loreto in Milan and displayed to the public. This was the tragic and humiliating end of the leader once known as Il Duce. The life and rule of Benito Mussolini is one of the most striking and cautionary tales of modern history. This process, from a journalist to a powerful dictator, then to a puppet, and finally to an execution victim, demonstrated how political ideologies can control people and how absolute power can be corrupting. Fascism is still a concept debated in world politics today, and its effects are still felt. Mussolini set out with the dream of rebuilding the Roman Empire, but he left behind only the devastation of war and a legacy that his own country wished to forget. We hope that this video has helped you better understand this important figure in history. You can find the sources we used in the preparation of the video in the description. Your support is very important for our channel to produce better content. Please do not forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video. Stay well.